This is a Sauder Management Consulting Club event, one of the consulting workshop series that we're organizing to help people who are trying to move from different professions and pivot their career into consulting, so you can learn more what it actually means and what you're expected to do, what kind of skills that are expected to have and apply. We are here to find out more about product design thinking today, and we are honored to have Jonathan Savidant, experienced digital services manager from Deloitte office in Victoria, to share his experience with us. Jonathan's going to provide you a little bit of a more introduction about himself and his company in a few minutes. I just want to have a quick housekeeping list here. So when you want to ask questions, I think Jonathan's going to announce during the presentation when is a good time, you can ask questions. And when you want to ask questions, just use the function to raise your hand. And if you can, please have your cameras on so we can see your reactions, and also the presenters can better read the audience. It kind of feels better connected. And today we have Alan from Sauder Management Consulting Club, me, Daniel, and we're probably going to have David joining us later. Three of us worked pretty hard to set up these workshops, and we are happy to work more with Jonathan and his company and other consulting companies to actually show us what it really means to be a consultant in top firms. So saying this, I'll pass it on to Jonathan to kick it off.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Thanks for the invite, and good on you for all you guys for organizing this. When I did my MBA, I was in the consulting club and did some stuff like this. So I think it's good value for sure to give you exposure. I hadn't been in consulting before I did my MBA. I had worked in e-commerce for largely in grocery before that, and part of my MBA discovery was similar in that I decided that consulting was something that I really was interested in, and kind of took it from there, and ended up at Deloitte. Not right away, by the way. I did some independent consulting and then eventually got a job here at Deloitte in Victoria, and I've been here for 4.5 years. So I mean, I think and yeah, it's been a good experience. So so this is me on the left. This is Jess. If she's going to be able to join us, she's going to do the first session. But I'm in what's called Deloitte's Customer Strategy and Applied Design offering, which is within our consulting business line, which I'm going to show you in a little bit what that is. But what we consider ourselves is we're an end-to-end experience design consultancy, or part of Deloitte, which means that we can take clients everywhere from what we call like ideation or imagine through to making those ideas and strategies, turning them into requirements and figuring out how we're going to implement them. And we even have a front-end development branch of customer strategy and applied design that actually does custom web development as well. But more often than not, I'm working kind of in the middle of that, where they've come up with sort of the idea, and it's my job to translate that into a real product and a real sort of and a process for implementing it. And then I often stay with the projects through implementation and into the build phase, working as sort of the design lead. So my work's primarily, since I joined Deloitte, with the public sector. It's largely because I live in Victoria, and the majority of the work here is for the BC government. Before my MBA, I was in the private sector. I worked for Sobeys, and I was in their e-commerce for online grocery shopping. I think just some of the key clients that we work on here in Victoria, BC government, but within the BC government, there's lots of different places. We are a key player in the social sector, so Ministry of Children and Families and Ministry of Social Development. So those are the two ministries responsible for employment assistance, and also like foster children, autism funding, childcare subsidy, those sort of things. We also have a lot of stuff in the financial area. So the project that I'm currently working on is for the BC Financial Services Authority, which is the regulator of real estate agents, mortgage brokers, credit unions, banks, anything in BC really that's financial related, they regulate it. And the nature of our projects are usually around figuring out a digital transformation strategy, which turns into usually a big platform implementation on something like Salesforce or Oracle, or in this case, Microsoft Dynamics was the last one, and designing like the front end portals and the processes around that. Jessica is a consultant who I've worked with a bunch. She's actually from UBC and has her BCom from UBC and has been with us for I think about 3 years. She shows up. I think there was just some communication with the link, so we'll see if she's able to join. But I think maybe just if we could take a minute or two. Most of you who joined early. I got a chance to know you a little bit, but maybe just 1 or 2 people, if you could put your hands up and say, what do you want to get out today? Like, why did you join? And if I don't hear from anybody, I'm going to pick on somebody. So I encourage you to volunteer. Okay, I see a hand. The first one I saw was Alicia. Go for it.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Alicia, and I'm here because I actually just had a first round interview with Deloitte yesterday, and I wanted to hear more about your experience and just more about the company as well.
Nice. Okay, I didn't see who was hand was up next. Ayush, did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, you did. Hi, Jonathan. This is Ayush. I am currently doing this MBA from UBC. And part of my previous experience was in service design, but particularly with within the hospitality industry. And I worked with a consultancy firm that solved operational inefficiencies for hospitality firms. But now I'm looking to pivot into the product management space. And I think I've never heard about this Deloitte's customer strategy and applied design, and this is why I'm really intrigued about getting into it. So, yeah.
Okay. I'll take 2 more, and then I'll make sure to catch up with you at the end. But maybe Tammy and I don't know who else. Amajo. I may have got your name totally wrong, but let's go with Tammy first.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for hosting this session. So I'm currently in my 4th year and I'm going to graduate in the next month or so. And I'm actually going to be joining Deloitte in September under the customer and marketing for the commerce, advertising, and marketing.
AMC. Okay.
So I just kind of wanted to get to know what to expect.
I probably screened your resume, so welcome. Okay, actually, so there's 2 more. So we'll go to Amitoj. If I got your name right, I'm sorry. If I got your name wrong, I'm sorry.
I think you got it perfectly right.
Okay.
No worry. So I think Ayush covered a part of my question. I also wanted to learn a little bit more about the customer strategy field and how, like, a little bit in more detail. And I also want to know a little bit more of the social impact initiatives at Deloitte. So if you could expand on that a little bit as well.
Okay, I'm going to write that down so I make sure to get it. So you wanted to know about customer strategy and the social impact. All right. So I think the last hand is Sehan, or did I pronounce your name totally wrong?
That's totally correct. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Hi, Jonathan. I'm Siham, and I've been doing project management for the past 10 years. I'm currently doing the Master of Engineering Leadership in Clean Energy Engineering. And just like Nazia, as part of the strategy course, Justin got us so interested in consulting. And now we got introduced to the concept of design thinking, but at a very high level. So that's what I'm hoping to get from here today, from the session today, to get to know the concept in depth, maybe.
Okay. Well, we're not going to get into it in depth in an hour, or actually really half an hour, but you'll get the introduction to it, and hopefully you can get your taste for it. Okay, so it sounds like you want to know a lot about Deloitte, so I'll make sure that we have enough time at the end for that. So if I'm starting to go long, please let me know. All right, so this slide is basically how Deloitte is divided up internally. And this is what you would see reflected on your job applications typically. First of all, each Deloitte firm is its own independent thing, and then there's sort of a global organization that's kind of a servant organization, which is Deloitte Global, but each, the Canada firm is independent, and it happens that the Canadian firm, it has merged with the Chilean firm a couple of years ago. So there is now a joint Canadian and Chilean firm, which does mean that there's a few more opportunities to go to Chile if you want and work on a project. I wouldn't say there's a ton of cross-pollination, but there is some, and especially just on casual calls, there are some people from Chile that I work with regularly. So within Deloitte, we have the 7 businesses that you see here. The largest one by far is called just consulting, which is really almost everything that's, I would say it's largely technology focused, but it's not entirely, because human capital sits in there as well. But a lot of that ends up being human capital management around technology. But consulting is about, in Canada, it's over 40% of our revenue. It's larger than audit, which is what we're traditionally known for. So the big 2 are consulting and audit, but these 5 are much smaller. Omnia is a new addition to our group of businesses, which is, we set up a business that's specifically targeted to serve artificial intelligence needs. It started out as a part of consulting, but what we found was that there was needs sort of spread around the entire organization. So they both go to market with their own proposals, and they also act as a servant agency for the rest of us to advise on artificial intelligence things. For lack of a better word. Within consulting, you have 5 different portfolios. I don't know all the portfolios within the other businesses because that's not where I work. You have strategy, analytics, and M&A, core business operations, human capital, enterprise technology and performance, and customer and marketing. Customer and marketing is what I'm in, and it's I'm not sure if it's the largest, but it's close to the largest. There's about 600 or 700 people in C&M in Canada and Chile. And then within customer and marketing, what you'll see, and within each of these, there are what's called offerings. And within that, I'm in customer strategy and applied design. The other ones, customer marketing, are digital customer, which is largely focused on CRM implementations, which is customer relationship management solutions. And then advertising, marketing, and commerce is the smallest of the 3 offerings, but they're focusing on MarTech, so Google AdWords and beyond, I guess. That's the very beginning of it. But how do you set up the strategy and the technology for developing better digital marketing campaigns, really. So customer strategy and applied design is also where you might have heard of Monitor Deloitte. So that's a very sort of the more strategy and how do we go to market with various things, part of our brand. So within customer strategy and applied design, as I think I explained it to you before, but they sort of imagine figuring out the product and experience design, which is what it's called. And then there's front-end engineering, and I'm in the product and experience design group. So a few things. COVID was rough at the beginning, but then because we are so technology focused, it rebounded hard, and we are now going faster than ever in hiring. So while we did actually have to lay off some people at the beginning, it went the other way very quickly, and it's an interesting time for sure. We're growing very fast. Any questions about this? Is that that's just meant to be a pure introduction to Deloitte? I see a couple of hands. I don't know, Alicia, you might have had yours up before because I don't think I got to you when you were introduced, but if you want to say something, go ahead.
Oh no, I think I just forgot to put my hand down.
Okay.
But I did have a quick question about how the kind of cross-departmental work is, because I've heard that you could work at Monitor and then you could get still some experience at financial services and vice versa, and just wanted to get sort of your point of view on that, if that's an appropriate question.
Yeah, common question. Yeah, I mean, you will never get any experience in audit and assurance because we're not allowed. But other than that, yes. So there's firewalls put up between audit and assurance and everybody else. So they're definitely if you work there, you don't work anywhere else. If you work everywhere else, you don't work on it. But yes, certainly I work, like on my current project, I've worked with people in risk because we're building a platform really for risk assessment of regulated entities. So to figure out like anti-money laundering and stuff like that for credit unions, trying to connect the dots between credit unions, mortgage brokers, real estate agents, figure out how money laundering is funneling through real estate in BC. That's the sort of data that they're looking for in the current project. So we've worked with risk advisory. Another project I've worked with Omnia. I've never worked with financial advisory, but that's not to say it doesn't happen. I know like if you end up on a mergers and acquisitions project, those actually usually have financial advisory, tax and legal, and strategy and analytics and M&A, like all combined. But I've never worked on one of those. So yes, absolutely, you work cross sector, and even my current project is not a customer strategy and applied design. It's actually a core business operations, and I'm like the experienced designer seconded to that group for the project. Carl, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. It's always good to read about positive things about COVID, but just by curiosity, when you say that things are picking up now, is it actually because there are activities and projects that are related to the post-COVID situation, or is it just projects that have been on hold for a while and that are resuming now?
It's both. One challenge is I think it was in the news, so I can tell you this, but we won on a lot of the work for the vaccine rollout for governments across Canada. And so that has really been a lot of work for us. To be honest, a lot of people, I'm not working specifically on that, but I know some people on my team were pulled into that. The other aspect is, yes, starting up new programs like, the BC government did freeze some spending, but their fiscal year is coming up. But I think it starts tomorrow, and there's been a lot of planning for that, and planning on restarting a lot of the spending. So, and it's not just that. Private sector's interested is spending money too, because they are so desperate to do the digital transformation that has been going slowly or not going at all. They need to do that now, or they're in trouble, right? Because everything is going digital, or it's already gone digital, and they're trying to catch up.
We've seen so, yeah.
Yeah. Ahmed, did you have something to say?
Yes, thanks, Jonathan. I just wanted to know a bit more about the difference between strategy, analytics, and M&A, and the customer strategy and applied design.
Yeah, strategy, yeah. So this is customer strategy and applied design is, I would say it's more product strategy or digital strategy. If you're talking about like reorganization of reorging an organization, that would probably be done by these guys typically. So they tend to focus on mergers and acquisitions. And analytics, I don't know why they get that term, because we all do it. We actually have an analytics group within Digital Customer, but I would say this team very much mergers and acquisitions, and then or reorging is their focus. I'm not saying that's the only thing they do, but yeah. So that, and then customer strategy, again, this is customer strategy, so it's more around how do we build a product, or how do we build a service for our citizens if it's public sector.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan.
I think I'll move on at this point, just in the sake of time. So you will also see these. These are not who you work for. This is how we go to market. So you'll see the term Deloitte Digital all over the place, because it's used a lot. And it's mostly used in consulting, but it also gets used by Omnia and everybody else. These are really just brands. And in some cases, they're companies that we've acquired over the years and have just kept using that name, as is the case of Monitor. Actually, most of them are that. Monitor, Market Gravity, Doblin, TWG was just acquired recently. Market, all those are just companies that we bought recently, and we still use their brands when it makes sense. Deloitte Digital is our own brand, and it's used pretty commonly on almost all the consulting proposals. And it's generally how we present ourselves. So every once in a while, we'll go back to the core Deloitte brand, but what you'll see is Deloitte Digital most of the time. So yeah, when you're applying for a job, you're not applying to work at Deloitte Digital or Monitor usually, although sometimes they do kind of have a subgroup that that is tied to the brand. But for the most part, you're tied to these, and then sometimes we'll get together and tell the client that, hey, we're giving you Monitor here, or we're giving you TWG. I mean, TWG is a recent acquisition, so they're still kind of operating as a separate entity as they slowly get kind of, I don't want to say absorbed, but incorporated into Deloitte as a whole. So any questions on that? Okay. So talking about Deloitte Digital, this is, how I view Deloitte is we are an experience consultancy. We we design, imagine, and build experiences for our clients. So this is kind of our mission statement. We create new growth. We try to elevate the human experience with connecting ideas, technology, and talent in a way that only we can, because of the breadth. Really, our power is in the breadth of our service. I don't know if any consulting firm can take you from idea to development, and then also maintain your systems from an end-to-end perspective like we can. And with the intent of making an impact that matters is one of our other slogans. So to shape a better future for not just Deloitte, not just clients, but everybody. There is a pretty heavy social impact part of Deloitte that we try to be true to, and I believe that we do pretty well at that. But that's just basically a quick sales pitch for this is Deloitte Digital. Any questions on that? No. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the activity. I think I'll kind of explain it, and then if we can do breakout rooms of maybe 2 or 3, that would work well. Probably 2 would be best, because what I'm going to get you to do is interview each other and just rethink an idea. So design thinking, I think, can be summed up by that sort of quote that's attributed to Einstein. I don't think it is, but if I only had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend up to 2/3 of that hour in attempting to define what that problem is. In that sometimes it's more important to figure out what the problem is than it is to solve it, because how you phrase that, make that problem statement will in fact determine how you solve it. So this is our exercise, and we'll do this actually as a group. But if you have some paper in front of you, if you don't, that's fine. If you can sketch on a whiteboard or whatever, that would be great. But I'll give you 1 minute or maybe 90 seconds to design the best vase. Design the newest, best, craziest vase you can think of. And time starts now. I'm going to design something. All right, I'll give you 20 more seconds. All right, let's see your vases. Okay, who wants to show me your vase? Or at least describe your vase if you haven't drawn anything. Who's volunteering? If not, I'll show you mine. Oh, there we go. Kavani. You're on mute.
Whoops, most said statements of 2021.
Okay, awesome.
So I have a whiteboard, hope you can see it.
Perfect.
So this is my vase,
yeah.
And it is one bottom, but it has multiple holes for the top, because I find that when I'm designing my my flower configurations, I want to have some creativity in how I can design the bouquet. So sometimes I may want to put some specific flowers in this one, another set of specific flowers in this one, and I want all of them to have equal access to the water.
Nice. I love it.
This
That's
is
great.
what I'm
Yeah.
working with.
Perfect. You can get perfect placement of the flowers. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Mhm.
Okay. Crystal, I think you had your hand up next.
Yeah, so it's a pencil sketch. Let me not blur my background. So it's got a handle, as you can see right
Oh
here.
yeah. Yeah, I see it.
So that I've broken vases in the past. I don't want to do that, so I've got a handle. And then there's this little thing at the bottom to fill in water, so that it won't run out of water.
Oh
There's
yeah.
it'll
I
fill
had that
up
same idea,
automatically.
you know. I like that.
And then there's also this little light here that will somehow communicate with the flower or the plant to indicate that there's not enough sunlight, so I can put it by a
Pretty
window.
cool. Okay, I think the next hand is Amatage.
Hi. I didn't do a pretty good job of drawing it, but I'll explain the idea behind it.
All right.
I went with an hourglass shape, like sort of hourglass, because it's symmetrical and I like symmetrical things. So instead of having an indent on the top, it's sort of in the middle, and the top and the bottom look. So if it's upside down, rather than the opening, other than that, it would look exactly the same.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, that's enough vases. I hope you all great idea. I'm not going to show you mine because it's not very good. Okay, so let's step back and ask why. Okay, why does somebody actually want a vase? Why does somebody use a vase? Anybody want to volunteer an idea for why do you want a vase? Okay, Alan, your hand's up.
To show that you've spent money on flowers.
Okay, I like that. Okay, to show that you spent money on flowers. Okay, I'm gonna just start writing these down if I can. Oh, except whoops, I stopped screen sharing, my bad. Hang on just a sec. Okay, who wants to go next while I'm fixing my screen? Okay, I didn't see the next hand. I think it was Tammy.
Probably to prolong the freshness of the flowers.
Okay, so we've got to show that you spend money on flowers, to prolong the freshness on flowers. Okay, so let's ask why to one of those questions. Let's go with prolong the freshness. Okay, why do you want to prolong the freshness of the flowers? And maybe I'll just pick on you, Tammy. We can follow that idea. Let's go off of me.
Sure.
Let's follow it down.
Sure. Probably so that you can display it for longer in your home or wherever you choose.
Okay, and why do you want to display it?
Probably for the other reason, to show that you either receive flowers or you spend money on flowers.
Okay, so this, okay, there we go. So this is actually a new one. So it's a status symbol. This is kind of cool. This is not where it usually goes. Okay, so that's not going to align to my next slide, but that's okay. How about this? So let's go to the next slide. And I want to stick with what you guys came up with. So my next slide says design. So where this usually ends up is let's design a way to experience flowers. But let's rephrase that and say I want a new way to show off my flowers. Okay, so we're going to redefine the problem statement. It's not I want a way to show off my flowers. Okay, now you have 1 minute to think of an idea for a new way to show off your flowers. Okay, so don't worry about this. Let's stick with Tammy's idea. And I'll start the timer now.
Just a question, Jonathan.
Yeah, sure.
Does this have to do with the vase, or is it just any way to show off the flowers? Okay.
Forget about the vase. The vase, we decided, is just a way to show off flowers. So let's find a new way to show off flowers. And it could be a new vase. Maybe it's a better vase, but maybe there's another way.
All right, thank you.
you got 10 seconds. And stop. Okay, who wants to tell me about their new way to show off flowers? Any volunteers? Okay, Alan, you got your hand up. And then Amitaj, and then Nazia.
So I hope you can see this, and it's not a heart. It is a vase with a very wide base, and each of the holes is positioned in a different way, so you can see each of the flowers.
Okay. Amitaj?
I think that's Instagram.
Instagram?
Yeah.
Hey, that was my idea too. I was saying like Instagram. Let's do Insta flowers, where like you have a live, you can post a live feed of your flowers on Instagram, or post a new photo of your flowers every like 2 hours. Okay, who was next? Nazia.
Yeah, I think instead of vase, I can show my flowers in a pot. It's like live. They're not picked up like in the. You don't have to put them in the feed. And then yeah.
So leave them in the garden and like live stream them or something. Is that what you're thinking? Okay, I like it. Okay, I lost track. Ayush, did you want to give your idea?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking of instead of a vase, why not it should be a rectangular glass box wherein the box is divided into several sections, and each section could have soil manure, wherein you can actually not just showcase flowers, but also showcase that you're really invested into growing the plants. So
okay, I like it. Yeah, so it's like okay, Crystal.
Yeah, so mine was essentially, it was similar. I went with a box, not a box, but it's like some sort of crystallizing material that when you pour it into, say, a container and you put the flower in, it will just leave it permanently that way.
Ooh.
So the flower wouldn't disintegrate and you can show off your flowers in your home forever.
Neat, I like it. And Tammy, did you have your hand up? Last one.
Yeah, so it was just like another way to display it in your home, but I thought about reducing the space that a vase would take up on like a table or surface. And I did some kind of like honeycomb kind of design where it'll be like on your wall. So create a flower wall.
Okay, very good. Okay, so hopefully you can sort of start seeing the point of this. The point is like when you expand the problem statement beyond what you might have been given at the beginning, you open up a world of opportunities and a whole lot of different solutions that you wouldn't have thought of if you had just said design a new vase. Okay, so that is kind of the core of design thinking, which is challenge the brief and ask why. There's more to it than that, but that's the start. So the idea here is that in traditional organizations, they get very tied to products, or like we're a vase company, or we're a grocery company, or we're this, and we're going to invent the new vase, and then we need to find what the market is for this vase, and then we're going to try to sell it. And it's not. This is a bit of a narrow-minded view. Like, yes, of course they're going to ask about their customers, but they're going to think of themselves as a vase company. Whereas, how about we just like leave all that behind and go, okay, who are our current customers, or who are the people that we want to serve? And okay, well, maybe it's people, we want to serve people who want to experience flowers, or we want to serve people who want to show off their flowers. Okay, how do they want to do that? And so by starting with the customer need and want, and then building concepts around that, and then reframing your organization around that. I mean, it's easier said than done, but at least by starting with the customer, you open up your mind and options. Okay, so, and I think at its core, it challenges the problem statements, and it places users at the heart of it. So maybe that's the second part of it. Yeah, so here's the bullets, I guess. It considers the end-to-end user journey. So it's about the experience. It's not just about one particular thing. It's not just about the app. It's about the service that the app creates, and getting people to use the app, and everything around it. It's about researching customers, researching end users. It's about focusing on them, your end users, and about challenging processes and tasks to deliver a better user experience. So this is kind of a very quick design thinking process. So you start with what I like to call the brief, which is the initial problem statement from the client. And you take that and go, okay, I need to understand your users. And that's typically done through interviews and observations. You can use data analytics from websites or whatever you want. Also just generally doing research on what other people have done, competitors have done. But it needs to start by trying to understand your users by building out their like personas, their journeys with their current journeys with you, to understand their end-to-end experience with you. Once you have done that, we try to redefine the problem, and those are those why statements that I just walked you through. And the goal of that is usually what we call a how might we statement. So the how might we statement that we came up with there was, how might we improve or create a better way for people to show off their flowers? Okay, so we took how might we started with how might we design a better vase, and we ended up with how might we show off their flowers. And you might end up coming up with there's like many different ways to redefine that problem, and you don't necessarily have to pick just one, but the point is to explore those and try to get a number of them so you're not restricting yourself. Once you pick your how might we one or more how might we statement that you're going to explore, that's when you go to solving the problem. Okay, and that's what you just did there with designing your fancy new vase, or the honeycomb that Tammy came up with, or Instaflower. So you're coming up with new solutions. Then once you have a number of solutions, you would then whittle them down by figuring out, okay, which ones of these can I realistically build, solve, which ones do I think customers will actually want? And then what you do is you actually build something very small and simple to test against them, prototype it, put it in front of them, and see what they think. And it's really quite possible, at least for simple things, to do this all very quickly within a couple days. And the insights that you can generate are incredibly valuable and can help redirect a very expensive project early on. And that, I think, is what design thinking is about. And you don't just do it once. You can take your findings from this prototype and test and go, okay, well, my idea is crap, or maybe my idea is good and I think we just need to refine it, or I don't think we defined the problem right, and go back and try again until you're happy with the results. So that is the 5-minute introduction to design thinking. Any questions on that? Daniel.
So just working within the government system, I know how kind of slow it is and everything. So when you work with your clients within the government and use this kind of a process, did you have any kind of a resistance or something because they're so used to the old way of doing things, like the waterfall way? And how does that work? Like, are people receptive to this kind of a new way of approaching problem solving?
Yeah. For the most part, yeah, it depends on the project. There's some projects that are much better for design thinking than others. But certainly they really love seeing prototypes, and doing the design early on is where I would say we get the most traction. But challenging the brief, yes, that is challenging with government, because often we're contracted and they already think they know what they want. And so sometimes it's a push. For the next project, we say, like, look, can we get involved earlier when you're actually trying to come up with these ideas? I know, you might see us as the implementer of the solution, but we would like to be partners earlier on. And we've had success with that, especially with the social ministries, getting earlier in the decision-making process, particularly with the Ministry of Children and Families and some of their service redesign. But yeah, it's hard for sure to get inroads with the government, but I would say it's happening in pockets for sure.
Oh, that's good to hear. I hope these pockets expand fast.
Yeah. Crystal.
Hey, Jonathan, do you mind giving an example of when this design thinking process has been used in a project that wasn't for a product, like developing a product, but was for something perhaps less tangible?
Well, we do it for service design a lot.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be for a product. But I would say we use it. We used it on the Ministry of Children and Families, My Family Services website, which is used for childcare subsidy application, largely to define the minimum viable product, because they were really having trouble figuring out like what was important. And so by sort of prototyping it and making some of these ideas real, it helped them decide like, okay, where do we actually want to invest our money early on? And the decision there was like, I would say it was more or less in line with what they had thought originally, but it made us focus a lot of energy on, particularly on the childcare subsidy application, because they were able to see like how complicated it was to actually implement it digitally and how much value could potentially be made from it, just by basically getting the ideas from them and designing a few different prototypes of how we could do the web forms, and then taking it and getting it in front of actual users and saying, okay, what do you think?
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you so much. That's really good to know.
Nazia?
Yes, I do have a question regarding the process that you follow during this design thinking. Does it remain same with the similar services, or there is a chance that it is not the same, and how the risks are mitigated in terms of if you're going to the prototype and testing it in the market, then the risks are identified, that how or your work stops after product increment?
No, it doesn't stop after product increment. I would say this process is a way of de-risking a project. So it's basically, you don't necessarily, we do incremental development, let's say, but I don't think what I'm describing here is a little bit more compressed than just incremental development and getting feedback from users as you're building a multi-million-dollar project. This is more about like, how do we refine our ideas early on and spend as little money as possible to try to get going in the right direction, so we don't have to spend millions of dollars and then course correct later on. So I pitch this as a way of de-risking the project and identifying those risks early on. It's not so much like, yes, there's a risk management component to any project, but this project is more about identifying and managing risk and early on, or this method. Does anybody else have any questions? Realizing it's already 7:45. Oh my gosh, time flies. Okay, so we'll get to the activity, and we might actually end up going over a little bit late, but this is just kind of the example that I had. Like, so when you're talking about the brief, like say somebody goes to you and says, okay, we want to build a bridge from here to here in Victoria. I developed this for you, Vic, haven't changed it, but if you don't know Victoria, the West Shore is weirdly close to Esquimalt, but you have to drive all the way around this way, and it takes like an hour to do it, and it's kind of weird. And I honestly don't think they would ever build a bridge here, but when you look at it on a map, you're like, why has it never happened? But I think the thing is, like, when you get a brief like that, it just begs itself to be challenged, like, because everybody realizes how much money a bridge would be. Do we really want to build it? And so you need to identify, like, why are people using it? Who are the actual people who would use it? And we do that by identifying like who they are and what their goals are. And then when we're talking about, once we identify users, and they might all have different reasons, like one person just wants to do their downtown commute quicker. One person just hates spending time in traffic. Maybe for them, like sitting on the bus and being able to, having better public transit there might work, because they can just spend that time doing their work rather than having to sit in their car where they can't actually work. Somebody doesn't want the bridge. Somebody wants more time to do other things. Maybe they should just work from home. I mean, there's a lot of ways to redefine any problem, is what we're trying to get there, And then, so when we actually look at those wants, then you just go, okay, how might we actually address them? So, how might we make it so enough people work from home that we never actually have to expand travel? Well, mission accomplished, thanks to COVID here. Definitely don't need any bridges anytime soon here in Victoria. But there's also other questions, like, people would say, like, why are we building more car infrastructure? We need to build other things. So how might we actually reduce the number of cars on the route over 7 years? The point that I'm trying to make here is that your how might we's that you come up with when you're redefining the statement should be challenging. They should never be easy, and they should kind of find this middle ground between being way too broad. To be fair, like how to experience flowers might be a little bit too broad, and they shouldn't be so narrow. So it shouldn't be like, how do we reduce drive time by 5 minutes? You know, that's like just too narrow. Too broad might be, how do we rethink the transit patterns in Victoria? Nice question, but good luck answering it. And then once we've identified at least a few how might we's, then we need to go, okay, can we actually solve it? And then you need to pick one that is realistic for you to explore. So now we're going to get into the activity. We're not really going to cover prototyping and ideation today. We're just going to cover that first end. So I guess let's pick a question that we can all, and let's pick the same question all together. So maybe just by a show of hands, these are the 4 that I came up with. Does anybody have an idea or problem statement that they really want to add to this list that they've always wanted to address? I've got the new bridge, find it easier for a place to live, make it easier to file expenses, make it easier to register for courses. No takers? Okay. Who wants to design?
I can suggest one then.
Okay. Sure.
How to get a job with Deloitte.
Okay. All right. I don't want to edit this because I'll lose the screen sharing, but 5 is now how to get a job with Deloitte.
I'm just joking. You have to do that.
Okay. All right. Okay. So by show of hands, you can just raise your hand when I say the number. Who wants to design a new bridge? Okay. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. I count 4. Okay. 4 for vote loan. Who wants to make it easier to find a place to live? 1, 2, 3, 4. I counted 4, is that right? Okay, so we have 4 and 4. Who wants to make it easier to file their expenses? Yeah, I know. It's popular in our firm, but okay, nobody. Who wants to make it easier to register for courses? 1, 2, 3. Okay, tiebreaker. You can't vote for 3 or 4. Everybody who didn't vote for 3 or 4, you have to vote this time. Well, actually, everybody votes again. Okay, so who wants to design a new bridge? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who wants to make it easier to find your next place to live? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, you're jumping around on my screen. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're finding a new place to live. All right, we're all doing question number 2. Okay, so we're just going to do the first half of this, which is empathize and define. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is go out there, interview each other in pairs, go interview each other for 2.5 minutes and each to ask about your last experience trying to find a place to live. And then together come up with a couple themes. So, you know, it might be like they need a better way of searching. There isn't enough actual housing out there. It's too expensive. Come up with those themes and then come up with at least like 2 or 3 how might we questions that cover that. All right.
How much time would you like, Jonathan?
Let's keep this as quickly as possible. I'm surprised how late it's got. Sorry. Let's go. How much over do you want to go? Because this is going to be the end of it, but 10 minutes, and then I'd like to give enough time for questions. Is it okay if we go 50? Yeah. What do you think, Daniel? 15
minutes should be fine. I mean, from previous experience. So I hope people don't have any other.
If we're okay with going 15 minutes over, let's do this for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back for 15 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense. Okay, so you have 10 minutes to do this, interview each other, and come up with 2 or 3 how might we statements, and we'll come back and talk about them. Okay. Hey, y'all. Yeah, hopefully that was okay. I mean, usually I like to have a little bit more, this is how to do it, but hopefully you were able to kind of figure it out from my introduction. So how many breakout rooms are there? There's 4 rooms. So maybe just like in like 30 seconds, if each room could kind of just say, well, actually, why don't you just tell me what if you came up with how might we's, what you came up with, and let's just start with that and try to keep it to that. So maybe we'll start with room 3. Who wants to talk from room 3? That's Carl, Kamoni, Lillian, Nazia.
I think Lily, not to push you. You have the notes. No, who took
Yeah, Lily took great notes.
Yeah, we had it on. So can we share the screen?
Yeah, sure. I'll stop sharing.
Oh no, it actually disappeared. So it's okay. It's okay. It disappeared. The whiteboard.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's the annoying thing about Room. You lose your whiteboard when you leave the room.
I could give a quick recap. So
okay.
So when we were interviewing each other, we were trying to figure out, okay, why do people move in the first place? And then we went really wide with this. So we're saying people move because of they want to take care
It's
of
my cat. Sorry. Don't mean to distract you. Go ahead.
No, so people move because maybe education was a big one. They want to be closer to universities, or maybe finance is another one. They want to be moving closer. They have more money, so they want to move to more affluent neighborhoods, or they have less money, they need to move to cheaper housing. We also identified things such as jobs, wanting to move closer to the work, or also moving closer to utilities and services. So we went really wide with this. And then when we're thinking about redefining the problem, we went really wide and we said that how might we redesign our cities so that these services are more accessible to people to prevent people needing to move. So we came up with ideas such as more access to grocery delivery service, or making grocery delivery services cheaper. We also spoke about increasing SkyTrain so that folks are able to get to where they want to get more. We spoke about more remote work options. We spoke about more online classes. So we had a really thorough and wide discussion.
Awesome, thanks. Awesome, really appreciate you telling us all that. It's great stuff. Let's go with room 2. Angela, Art, Pete, and Crystal. Is there any volunteer from room 2 who wants to talk?
I guess I could talk. So
thank you.
We did the same kind of the process as the other group, discussing our own experiences or most recent experiences of why we had to move. So within our group, we had a newcomer to Canada, working professional, and a student. So kind of like, what did we have in common? And then we started talking about pain points about moving, and some of the things that we came up with was the price, having to deal with the market in Vancouver. We also talked about certain needs, so being close to work, close to amenities, and some of our ideas kind of rotated around how do we tie in kind of like if we are the employer, if we are the organization or the company, how do we make it better for our employees to who need to make that move or make that transition. So I had read about certain companies having like a concierge almost that would help people when they move, have to relocate for their jobs. How do they make that transition better? And that person kind of looks ahead and looks for places for people to move into, certain neighborhoods that people might want to move into, schools. So we were kind of like thinking, how do we tie that in as a responsibility of the employer and as a service to the employees? That's kind of like where we were going with it. Yeah.
Cool. All right, thank you, room 2. Okay, I'll go to room 1 and then room 4. So who wants to talk from room 1?
I'll speak on behalf of room 1.
Thanks.
So other than what's already been mentioned, like the pricing, and one thing that different we had in our group was, again, a newcomer to Canada, was lack of communication. So the person being in a different time zone, they had to communicate in a different time zone, and they weren't able to see the places themselves. So what they saw on the websites or the platforms wasn't what the place actually.
I think Amitaj just froze, but I think I get what he was saying. Like, yeah, you don't know, right, what you're actually going for. Does anybody want from room 1 to pick up?
Yeah,
thank
you. From there. So yeah, one person in the room was sharing their experience about whatever was online was not actually physically when sending a friend to the location. So there was a big sort of trust issue there. Person was looking for a long-term rental as an international student. So we also went into sort of ideating and, how can we solve this? So, one of the ideas was a long-term Airbnb. Airbnb is usually for short-term, but what if there was a long-term platform or a platform for long-term rentals similar to Airbnb, where it's actually all these trust issues are managed by, some sort of organization. It was around those lines.
Cool. Thanks. And so finally, room 4. The R's, S's, and T's.
I can speak on behalf of room 4.
Thanks,
So
Tammy.
we did actually come up with a very similar solution as room 1, and we found the same issues where there's a lack of communication, that the advertisers don't really respond, and we can't really see the unit ourselves. So something like an Airbnb long-term rental site with filters to see your perfect location and to see reviews, so we can trust the advertiser a bit more, and with like a virtual tour option so that we can actually see the place before we commit to a long-term rental contract. Yeah, that was basically what we came up with.
Awesome, thanks. So I think if I could just say, one pattern that I'm seeing here, and it's really common, is you're jumping to the solution before, like, you're not sticking in the problem space, right? You're thinking about, how am I going to solve it? And I mean, some of those could be, I would say, just, I would encourage you to spend some time in the problem space and define the problem before you jump to the solution. So say, like, Ahmed, yours is a good example. So how might we improve the trust, or have a better, more trustworthy experience when finding a place to live remotely when you don't live in the city? I think is a good way to define that. And then, but just be deliberate about defining your problem, and then from then, okay, take that statement and go, okay, how many different ways are there of solving that trust issue for remote, finding a place remotely? And that's what ideation would be. So I think, just to kind of, like, if you want to take away that assignment and fill it out, I'd be happy to look at them and give you guys some feedback. If not, no big deal. I'm not going to feel offended. But the rest of it is to basically take your, like, 3 how might we's, pick which one you think you can feasibly, like, come up with an idea and potentially even prototype. And what you would do is, okay, take the problem statement, like what Ahmed said, and come up with, like, 5 or 6 different ideas. And there are many ways to ideate. I haven't even begun to talk about ideation methodology, but brainstorming is one of them. So come up with a bunch of different ideas and then look at all those. And then what you would do is, let me just see, there's a slide here for that somewhere. Take the ideas, there it is, and go, okay, which of looking at the 10 ideas that I come up with, which ones do I think are feasible to solve? So within my capabilities or my organization's capabilities, which ones do I think users would desire most? And which ones do I think are profitable? Or in the case of the public sector, are sort of efficient, like they provide the sufficient value versus cost. And then what you're looking for is take, those 10 ideas and try to kind of peg them on this Venn diagram. And the ones that are closest to the middle are probably the best ones to start with. And then what you would do is create some sort of way of representing that solution, which goes there. This is what I want to show you. And it could be any fidelity, but the point is, like, how do you get this in front of a user and actually get their feedback? So here we've got, like, a full website. It's actually interactive. This is something I built for childcare subsidy. And it's an actual, like, functional website on a prototyping tool called Luxure. But you can sometimes get just as much or better feedback just by storyboarding it or drawing it out on a piece of paper. And you know what? That stuff on the right took a lot less time than the stuff on the left. So the message on user testing is you're trying to get something that's just good enough to get feedback.
Sorry, Jonathan, I think you're not sharing the screen.
Oh, God damn it. Pardon my language. Thanks, Daniel. Okay. Oh, man. How many slides was that through? Okay, can you see it? No, it didn't work. Okay, so the viability Venn diagram was this that I was talking about. So when you're trying to figure out an idea, which idea to use, these are the 3 ways that we advise people to evaluate them. Can you do it? Do people want it? Can we make money on it? So this is your capabilities, profitability, and user understand whether a user wants it or not. And then prototyping is this. So this is a full-fledged website, a lot of work. Point is, when you're doing a prototype, all you need to do is enough that you can get feedback at this stage in the process, because the goal is to get feedback of that prototype. It's not to design the entire system. So yeah, that's I mean everything that I wanted to get through today. There was this one project that you guys as a consulting club can decide if you want to take on, but this is something that we are facing right now. And you're welcome to take this away. And if you want to work on it, let me know and we'll judge it or whatever you want to do. So we work with Ministry of Children and Family Development a lot. They have an ongoing problem where healthcare in remote regions is really difficult to distribute evenly. The example of this is autism funding. Children under 6 in particular get $22,000 a year. But the Ministry of Children and Family finds that a lot of that gets unspent in remote regions because there aren't enough of the type of people who work with autistic kids, behavioral interventionists or occupational therapists in the region. So they end up either being on a waiting list and sometimes in some cases never even getting off that waiting list before they turn 6, and most of their funding moves to the schools, to being provided through the schools. This is a particular challenge because autism is something that's very difficult to treat or to provide therapy remotely for. And so there's a lot of different aspects to this problem. Like you can think about it from the point of view from how do we provide supports? Like, is the Ministry of Children and Family providing the right supports? There's other aspects which are the remote provision of supports, which is something that can continuously be improved. There's also just like, how do you get behavioral interventionists and occupational therapists to actually work in these remote regions of BC or other parts of Canada? So I think this is something that we would love to get your feedback on if you're willing. And yeah, really just to follow that sheet that I sent out would be sufficient. But the general idea is to figure out, redefine the problem, come up with ideas, just pick one of your how might we's, and then come up with some ideas, pick an idea, and then come up with kind of a plan to prototype and test it. I wouldn't expect you to actually test it, but and take it through that point. Okay, so we're way over time. I'm happy to stay as long as you guys want to stay, but yeah, so let's do questions.
So just a little bit here. Thank you, Jonathan, for all just amazing presentation so far. If anyone here wants to participate in this problem solving, I shared my email here. You can also email Alan at the same email, alan@ubcsncc.com. So just send us your interest. If you're interested in working on this project, we're gonna share more background with you. Like you can see the links here, and we can organize some groups and some teamwork together through the club. And once we have some solutions, we can put them all together and again, connect with Jonathan to get some more feedback from him.
Yeah, totally interested to see what you have to say. And yeah, if you're busy, it's no big deal, but would love some new ideas here because it's a really big, difficult challenge for governments across Canada.
Excellent, we can give it a crack for sure. So we can dive into I guess the best part for the participants. Let's drill you with questions now.
Yeah. So yeah, happy to answer your questions about Deloitte or anything else, design thinking. And if you don't have any questions, you want to go home, that's fine. I won't be offended.
So someone is asking about sharing the slides. I think we can do that. Jonathan, would that be okay if we distribute them? They won't be widely available, only to the attendees that were here.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything really proprietary here. Sure. I mean, most of this stuff is available. Methodology is online. I just kind of synthesized it. So
fantastic.
So could you give us like an example of a challenging application of this framework in your recent few years of experience?
Okay. Let me think. I had an interesting small private project for I don't think I can tell you. who it was, but okay, so how do I phrase it? The client was a home services client. They do stuff like house cleaning or garbage removal or anything like that. And they were really trying to figure, they're growing for sure, but they were looking to grow beyond their current offerings. And also they were having troubles figuring out how to serve their clients better digitally, because they were still very much they did have a portal where you could book appointments, but it was kind of not that well developed. And so I think they came to us with a couple questions. One was like, okay, can you just evaluate our digital experience? Like we know it's challenging. And they asked us to kind of focus on that. But we tried to take a step back and go like, okay, well, who do you really want to be in the future? And particularly looking at a lot of the competitors and where the kind of taking a Porter's four forces assessment of it, and saying, okay, what is actually the problem that you're facing in a design thinking approach? And I think we got them to kind of pivot and see that they were actually losing control of the digital platform, because what they were facing is there's a bunch of aggregators out there that are they're not delivering the services, but they're becoming the face of the service. And so you risk just becoming a commodity unless you can establish a digital platform yourself or become so big and powerful that you can own these third-party digital platforms. And so we redefined the question to be sort of more, how might we own the digital experience for our customers? So kind of different, but it was definitely one of the weirdest applications of it, but I think it worked well, because we really identified a challenge that we didn't realize they had at first. And it wasn't, I didn't get this until I started doing the research.
It sounds like an issue with Groupon experiences, like restaurants and Groupon before, like in the older days.
It's not Groupon, but yeah, it's, yeah. Right. Angela.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I had a question about so the process and the framework of design thinking. When working with clients, is there a particular step in that chain of events that you get the most pushback? And then also kind of in reverse, is there a particular step where you find clients wanting to rush through? And then is it your job as a consultant to kind of determine the pace, or would you adjust your pace to suit their needs? I guess, like, how does that dynamic work?
Okay, so yeah, the first part, redefining the problem, is the most pushback always, because people think they know their problem, and they've come to you for solutions, not to give them new problems.
Right.
So that's hard. Thanks for joining, Nazia. Take care. And thanks to anybody else who has to leave. So that's definitely the most pushback. So what we try to do is sell them when we're defining the statement of work, saying like, let's spend some time on this. And usually it's easiest if we show them some of the deliverables, and we have these, there's a thing called an opportunity canvas that we often use to help redefine the problem. And that's a common tool, but basically where you just go, okay, let's identify who the key players are. Let's identify what your different channels are. There's a bunch of different categories where you just kind of stick sticky notes in it, where you just try to elaborate on the problem. And yeah, once they see those, they're generally like, okay, I get this. We're understanding our stakeholders, we're understanding our wants and needs. And then what was the second part of your question? Pace?
Yeah, if they, is there a particular part where they tend to rush through? And then again, is it your job as the person walking them through this process to set that pace? Or do you?
Usually we want to go faster than they want to go. It's rare that it's the other way around. Largely because like we want to be fully engaged. We don't want to be working on their project like 5 hours a week. It's very difficult for us. We want to be 40 hours a week and get it in and out as quickly as possible, especially on these Imagine engagements. So we'll often propose like a 6 week, and they'll go, can you do this over like 6 months? Because we don't think we can support. That's the other pushback, is like, to do an accelerated process like this, you need a lot of you need to have access to their users, and you have to have access to their subject matter experts. And if you can't get access to those, it just kills the project. And so that's when we have to adjust and say, okay, well, maybe we could. And what I've done sometimes is, well, okay, well, let's have a 2-week startup period where we'll kind of define what we need from you, and then we'll give you like 4 weeks to go away and figure it out, and then we'll come back. And you line up all your stakeholders, and then we'll come back. It's really hard when we don't like to put our consultants on something like 5 hours a week and be working on 10 different projects at once. It does not work well.
Okay, thank you.
That's your question. I lost track of whose hand went up first, but
Ahmed, you can go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Solon. Jonathan, you said initially in the presentation that you're growing and that you're hiring as well. So I was interested to learn more about what kind of skills do you look for in a candidate when you're screening resumes or even interviewing? Is there any specific skills that you look for?
I mean, it depends where we're hiring for, but for me in product and experience design, it's, I'd say communication, because you're going to be in front of clients, so you need to be able to clearly and concisely communicate your ideas. 2 would be the ability to work both functionally and technically, so have some curiosity about the technology, because we're always designing for platforms or something else, and you do need to be willing to embrace the constraints of what you're designing for, or else it's very easy to design something that is very expensive. And what was the third one? Oh yeah, I like to look for like actually a sense of aesthetic, because that's what I find we miss a lot in our organizations. Is I just drives me nuts when people just like they don't have the attention to detail on like language and layout and stuff like that. And it is a specialized skill, but I find it's where we are the most lacking on a lot of our projects, is like just people who don't have a good sense of just aesthetic design. So to be fair, I actually like to see it doesn't have to be fancy, but I like to see a like clearly and concisely laid out resume, to be perfectly honest. It appeals to me as a designer.
Not a McKinsey resume.
No, I don't need lots of colors or infographics, although it's cool if you do, no worries. But I also don't want a wall of text. You know, it needs to be easily understandable and well organized. Alan.
Yeah, so building on to Ahmed's question, I'm interested in what books you think are the best for learning about design thinking, and is there a recommended course about design thinking? Because right now they're pushing Agile, and I'm taking an Agile course through ESNT in Berlin, but I was wondering if there's one that you've heard of that perhaps your employees take.
I'd have to look at, so just to take a step back, terminology is really confusing in the world of design. So the term design thinking overlaps a lot with human-centered design or user-centered design. They're kind of 2 perspectives on the same thing. So if you see courses on human-centered design or user-centered design, they're probably going to cover aspects of design thinking. Design thinking, I would say, is the double diamond, like making sure that we focus in the problem space. So that's sort of where they start with. Whereas human-centered design is really how rethinking things, so we're always just starting with our customers first. But really, they end up in the same place. So I would say look to those 2 courses. For certification, Nielsen Norman the Nielsen Norman group has a conference that we sometimes send our consultants to, because it gives you a UX certification. So that's a good one. And there's some free ones. I'm trying to remember the name. It's like starts with it. I'll have to look into it. I think it starts with an I, but there's some free courses online that are actually really quite good. I'll make a note and try to send you some of that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Jonathan.
And I will say also, it's not like mutually exclusive with Agile either. Like Agile is just kind of this umbrella term to talk about like iterative development and and being flexible. This is an aspect of being agile. Like building this into your process would be considered agile.
So I opened up with agile because I learned about the IDEO group and design thinking.
Yeah, sorry, IDEO is who gives the courses actually.
The IDEO group, okay, great. So that one, for anyone else interested, it's called IDEO, and they have a certification for design thinking. Thank you, Jonathan.
Sorry, that's the I word that I was thinking of.
Fantastic.
Lily.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thanks, Danik, and for Alan for organizing this. Actually, just a question in terms of the implementations process for the design thinking. How often do you, because everything works great on paper, but it's always the implementation process that really kind of snags, right, too? And how often then do you kind of go back to this whole process when you're doing the implementation the strategy, or how often do you kind of go back to reevaluate, or are there all the strategies that you kind of use?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever gone back once we're in implementation, done a fulsome like design thinking process to reevaluate everything. But that's not to say we haven't like reevaluated things, but I don't think I've ever gone back. Probably mostly because I've worked with public sector, and to be fair, it's hard to go back and totally throw things out the window with public sector. That gets very contentious. So we usually find a way to make it work. But that's not to say that we don't pivot. So like, especially like in terms of processes, we'll constantly revisit how we're getting user feedback, I would say, and try to find, like on my current project, that definitely wasn't working. So we've questioned, okay, do we have the right people actually seeing our product? And so we've gone back and said, okay, who should be seeing this? And tried to get some of the actual like end users and convince them that we need to show it to their end users rather than just their business subject matter experts. But yeah, to be fair, once you're actually in implementation, we'll do this for new projects, new like change requests, but it's rare that we would go back and actually rethink the whole thing.
So what I'm hearing from you is that it's mainly about the user kind of experience or the user feedback that kind of really drives the project itself.
Yeah, like the process that I've talked to you about is really like an accelerated ideation. It's a way to come up with an idea. But let's say that aspects of it we don't use daily, like in terms of iterative development. Like we're constantly putting we do try to get our implemented projects or items in front of clients as early as possible, and then we will modify it either through prototypes or if it's the partially finished project. Like my current project with BC Financial Services is pseudo agile. Like we do iterative development and say here, and they're seeing it like within a week of us developing it, and we do prototypes, and we're constantly adjusting our designs. But that's more like built into the sprint process rather than going through what I just showed you today.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. The process itself is really kind of unique. It's a very simple way to think through the process each step of the way. So it's really nicely kind of laid out what to expect. And then in terms of the user feedback, or kind of like the feedback process, because one of the other challenges we find is that, at least I find, is that how do you reach out to those users, and how do you kind of make sure that you actually get enough feedback from them that is kind of usable, and how you filter through that too? Is that also something that you build into your processes, or the strategies that you kind of use to help with that?
Yeah, so we'll build, so when we're implementing, we will define who does user acceptance testing. We will also try to build in some end user testing component to our statements of work, and either we'll do that or they'll be responsible for that. For public sector, they rarely let us actually source the users. Usually the government wants to do that themselves, which is what their major holdup is. But they've done it for the My Family Services website. We had real parents who really wanted childcare subsidy when we did that development, and we really engaged them partway through the project with both the partially developed website and prototypes to get feedback, and we implemented that feedback. So, but it works when you build it in early. It's very hard to retrofit once you're like halfway through implementation to get them to start paying for user testing, because it just wouldn't be in their budget, right?
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anybody else?
So Jonathan, 8:33, you're probably a little tired. I don't know how dry the throat is. If anyone else has questions, please. Otherwise, we should
Thanks for
thank Jonathan.
sticking around till the end, and sorry for going late.
It's so value added. I mean, it's such a pleasure to hear it. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
We just had some background comments here that we learned more from this course than from some other reputable courses that we're taking. So this was really good.
Yeah, Dan and I are in the Yale course where we're talking about design thinking. I've learned more from this hour with you, Jonathan, than from taking that course, honestly.
So, thanks, appreciate it. Well, I have a 2-day course that we give on this as well, which gives you a lot more time to digest it.
I'll take that next then.
Yeah. I've actually never even been able to give that in Deloitte because we'll never actually let people go for 2 days straight, but we have it built out. It's just every time we sell it to somebody internally in the firm, they're like, can you do it in a day? And then we have to compress it all. So,
well, we're very grateful you did this tonight, and if your schedule allows, we can try to keep you engaged maybe in some future events later in the year.
Yeah, let me know. I'll try to make time, and I'll see if I can find somebody else to talk to in the firm, so you're not always talking to me. So.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, Jonathan.
No.
But hey, however you want to play it.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat again.
Excellent, excellent.
It's good to meet lots of people at Deloitte.
Fantastic. Yeah. So everyone, please put your virtual hands together for Jonathan. That was amazing, and so true that we learned so much. And we will be in touch with you about the Deloitte autism case, and we'll try to scratch something out for you. And we'll see how you'd like to proceed on your end.
Yeah, I can provide whatever you need. There's a person, Shauna, who's very passionate about this particular item, so I'm sure she'd love to. If you're interested, I can get her involved.
Yes, I think so.
Be mindful of your time also, so
okay,
you don't have to worry about that too much.
All right.
Okay, thank you all.
Thanks so much.
Thank you everyone for staying. It was great, Jonathan. See you soon.
Yeah. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.